Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. Tonight, we're talking about Trilogy of Terror, the beloved horror anthology movie from producer-director Dan Curtis, starring Karen Black, which premiered on ABC television March 4th, 1975. Curtis was already a household name in 1975, having created the legendary vampire soap opera Dark Shadows, as well as the Night Stalker, the highest-rated made-for-television movie released at the time, alongside well-received adaptations of Dracula and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, both starring Jack Palance. So when he hired the legendary Richard Matheson to adapt 3 of his short stories, it seemed like a can't-miss proposition. Black, who was already a 2-time Golden Globe winner and Oscar nominee at this point, was apparently reluctant to do the project, but there is no evidence of reticence in her performances, plural, as she plays lead characters in all 3 segments, including that of twin sisters in the second. Black literally throws herself into the various scenarios with such gusto that it's no wonder this has become one of her most recognizable film projects. Often remembered as that movie with the little ZUNI doll, the preceding 2 chapters simply can't compete with the final episode's breathtaking assault, and that's too bad since they are both worthwhile, suspenseful entries, and Black is equally captivating in 3 separate roles. But there's also a reason the ZUNI fetish has become the poster child for the film, because it's hard to beat a little puppet chasing a full-grown woman around her apartment for good-natured thrills and chills. This anthology showcase for Black and Matheson, served up with panache and chutzpah by Curtis, stands as one of the most enduring slices of television terror ever created for the small screen, and remains essential viewing for all horror fans, casual or committed. Happy Halloween, everybody. The best things come in 3s, and we're going to be talking Trilogy of Terror, celebrating its 50th anniversary, and we have an incredible panel to chat about it with me. Let's bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Dwan L. Hearn, aka The Moon.
Hello, hello.
Jorge Dadaco, beaming in from Portugal.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Right down the street from me in Chicago, Brett Nevue.
Hey, everybody.
And rounding out our panel, the second half of Sacco and the Moon's podcast, Sacco to Me.
Hi, how's it going?
And we're going to be chatting about Trilogy of Terror from 1975, celebrating its 50th anniversary. And we will be talking spoilers. So prepare yourselves, everybody. Thanks for coming on the show and welcome. Dwan and Sacco, thank you for joining us today. It's I'm really excited to talk about this movie. I was realizing, this is probably, at least the last segment of Trilogy of Terror is probably the most watched piece of cinema for me. I used to invite people over, and if we had 10 minutes, I'd be like, okay, sit down. We're gonna watch this. And their minds would be blown. That's the segment we remember, is the little ZUNI fetish doll running around the apartment chasing Karen Black. But it is, in fact, Trilogy of Terror. There are 3 stories, and we'll be talking about all of them. But let's kick things off. Moon, how did you come to this movie for the first time?
Actually, I wasn't introduced to the movie until you had asked me to do it.
Oh, great. Okay, so this is your first time seeing it.
It was my very first time seeing it, and I love finding new movies, particularly from the 70s and the 80s, because I would have missed them in my introduction to horror. It was an adventure to watch. I'll say that. Definitely an adventure.
We'll dig deeper for sure. Sacco, had you seen it before?
I had not.
Oh, this
was a new experience for me, was watching all 3 stories.
Great. Brett, how about you?
Yeah, awareness of it since it was on. I think it came out in 75. Is that? Well, yeah, because it's the 50th anniversary. And I was too young to watch it then, although I did watch a lot of stuff back then that I was far too young to watch. I don't think it aired in repeats or anything, did it?
It did. It played on TV, but I certainly came to it with more frequency once it hit video.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I saw it on video. It must have been in the early 80s then, was the first time I saw it.
And George, how about you?
Early 90s, on VHS, my Karen Black phase. I was watching everything she made and trying to track down everything she made.
So you came to this via Karen Black as opposed to from the horror standpoint?
Yes, because I was also trying to track down all the albums available on VHS, but Karen Black was such a strong figure in my viewings, and she attracted me. She has a special quality that attracts me in actors in particular, which is she has a nervous system that works in her roles, and that attracts me very much. And so I was trying to see everything she made, Shelley Duvall, and these actors that have that special quality, that off-kilter special quality.
Well, and this was certainly at the height of her powers. Like she had already won 2 Golden Globes. She'd been Oscar nominated. Her first television appearances were back in 1960. She'd been on Broadway, Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces. So she was a major star at this point. And the story goes that she wasn't initially too keen to do this movie, decided to sign on if her husband at the time, Robert Skip Burton, would be able to play opposite her in the first segment. You know, her agent, badgered her into doing it, and it has become probably her most recognizable showcase in terms of the Karen Blackness of it all. I love the fact that it came out the same year as Airport 1975, which is my favorite kind of big budget disaster turkey, because that movie just goes to 11 and stays there. But she also done Nashville, so it was a really good time for her. And this is an opportunity to really show her off. I want to bounce over to you, Sako. Like, are you as familiar with Karen Black's work as, say, George is?
No, I really wasn't. I had seen like screenshots of her, but this kind of kicked off like a foray into like 70s and 80s horror for me.
Yeah.
So I started seeing her, and I have a habit of binging horror movies. So
no one else can relate to that at all.
the titles kind of all blur together.
Yeah.
Right. So I started seeing a trend where she was the star. And I started forming like a little crush on her.
She later came to prominence for like a new generation when she appeared in Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses as Mama Firefly. Brett, how about you? Like, what was kind of your Karen Black intro?
It was the movies that you just mentioned, the movies from the 70s. We just watched, my wife and I just watched Nashville again the other night, and I think that's more of where I was with her. And then one of the amazing things just watching Trilogy of Terror is there another film in the 70s or TV movie or anything where an actor was able to like play 3 roles or 4 roles, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
Where that, and because it feels like something that happened and then sort of never happened again. And I feel like that is really interesting that experiment worked in that Twilight Zone-esque sense of what this was, like Twilight Zone version of horror. It could have been a series then after this or something, but that was my sort of introduction to her, was those movies, and then seeing her do this felt like she got to do something that a lot of actors never got to do before or since.
Yeah, it's a fun little stunt, to have her playing all 4 of those characters. And again, I think Karen Black had that cachet at the time that you would see, I want to see this movie where Karen Black plays the lead in all 3 of the stories. Moon, how about you? Like, what's your Karen Black experience?
So my thing about movies is really weird, because when I was younger, I just watched movies. I didn't really pay attention to titles and a lot of stories. I just kind of like saw movies. And it wasn't until I was much older that I started to pay attention to how things were actually done, and leading into me making films. I probably saw a lot of Karen Black movies without knowing Karen Black was in them, because I didn't care about who the actors were. I'm just like, ooh, this is a great character, as opposed to this is a great actor or actress playing a great character.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned House of a Thousand Corpses. I'm like, is she in that one? That's cool. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I have to go back and like check the filmography of Karen Black and just really see what movies I've seen her and be like, that's her. God. Because a lot of times you'll see an actor or an actress play something early in their career, and then they come back in sort of like a nostalgic kind of role or a tie back to something in their later years of acting. And you're like, wow, I can't even believe that was her. It's
Right.
crazy like that. And I think that's, so this is officially my introduction here.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. Well, she actually appeared. The first horror thing I know she did was a Canadian film called The Pyx, Pyx. She had the lead in that one. That was 73, but that same year she did The Outfit with Robert Duvall. She was in Drive, he said, mentioned Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces. She was in Day of the Locust, also in 1975. So, I mean, she was a major star in the early 70s. And Burnt Offerings, which is another Dan Curtis production, was 1976. And that one actually was a theatrical release as opposed to the TV movie. But she also did Hitchcock's last film, Family Plot.
Mhm.
She's in that as well. So she's definitely somebody worth checking out. Well, let's circle back around to the film at hand. This was a Trilogy of Terror. It came out on TV on March 4th, 1975. So not even like a Halloween type movie. This has become kind of like a staple for me at Halloween, which is why I'm airing this episode on Halloween. Because again, nothing gets me more in the Halloween mood than popping in the 20 minutes of the ZUNI fetish doll, which is actually called Amelia, and it's based on Richard Matheson's story, Prey. All of these stories are based on Richard Matheson's stories. And I think the combo of Matheson, Karen Black, and Dan Curtis. Dan Curtis was the producer of Dark Shadows and had also cranked out quite a roster of TV horror at that point. Brett, I see you nodding. Do you have some Dan Curtis recollections?
Oh, Matheson, he also, I think I wrote Amelia too, I think. He didn't write the first two, but he wrote the third one. Is that right?
He wrote the short stories.
I wrote the short story.
that all three are based on. He wrote the screenplay for the last one.
The last one. And I mean, you can kind of tell that there's some difference there, that there's like some subtlety. And I also read that Karen Black also worked on that phone call with her mom to make her mom just seem more mean, to put her into sort of a victim mode too, or you feel more sympathy for her. And it just felt like there was just a little bit more of a, turn up the volume to 11 sort of scenario in that last one that I think makes it stand out. Because one of the questions I kept asking myself watching it this time, specifically, I'm like, okay, when I'm watching it for whatever the fifth time in my life, what is the thing about this third one besides the big teeth and everything like that makes this one stand out? Is it within the story, within the dialogue, within the acting? What is it, or the directing? And I think it might be the writing, oddly, or at least the pacing and structure. And I really, really liked that too. The other ones, yeah, they have their time in the sun, but that one, I feel like there's something extra going on that is beyond sort of just this horror creature. There's something larger at stake among the characters. The metaphors are a little stronger.
Well, on Sacco and Moon, you're both writers. What do you think about the various stories and the adaptations?
The first one I thought was the most entertaining. The second one was a little predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was just so much fun to watch. Right? So it must have been fun to write. Especially the first one, I think, would have been really fun to write.
What if Mary Tyler Moore had a monster attack her?
Yeah.
That's exactly what that feels like. It feels like the Halloween episode of a Mary Tyler Moore show, which I love the Mary Tyler Moore show. As a screenwriter, I'm super critical now that I get into screenwriting and making movies. So I have a very judgmental eye when I'm watching these films. And I have to agree, Amelia is just fun to watch. Like, it's one of those things where you really don't even care how it's written. It's just fun to watch. Yeah. Sometimes the quote unquote bad movies are just that good because they're just fun. On our show, I talk about the movie Velocipaster all the time. It's a terribly made movie, but it's like terribly made on purpose. And it's glorious. I watch it all the time, and it doesn't.
It leans into it.
Yeah. And that's what makes it. That's what makes it good. That's what makes it memorable. I would totally agree with Brett. The writing on Amelia is so much different, and I think what makes that one stand out for me as much is the fact that Karen Black has to work opposite herself.
Yeah.
And I have a special place in my heart for actors that can pull off an entire picture, whether it's 90 minutes or 20 minutes alone. When you have to do all the acting, she has to do the acting on behalf of the mother character. She has to do the acting on behalf of the teacher and the boyfriend. She has to act opposite a puppet. Like, she has to do that whole thing on her own. And I think that should be both scary to an actor and also empowering. Because now this is literally your stage. Do it with it as you like. And I think Karen Black absolutely owned it, particularly in Amelia.
George, what are your thoughts on the various stories?
I think Amelia gets under our skin so in such a strong way that we tend to forget that the two first stories are actually quite interesting too. And I think William Nolan does a very good job in adapting Richard Matheson. He creates things that are not in the short stories. He creates some subtle intertext, which I find very interesting, especially in the first one. He uses Faulkner and Fitzgerald and to create this ambience and mood, this preparation, the seduction that a character does on the male characters. The teacher mentions sanctuary, Faulkner's sanctuary, and it's because she mentions Faulkner's sanctuary, the rape starts visualizing in his mind. I think that's a very clever touch from Nolan in the writing that's not in Matheson's short story. As a teacher, she seduces with the material which she has in her hands. She captivates with that material. I think that's a very clever piece of writing from Nolan in the first story. And he keeps using different intertexts in the first story. He also uses something which I find very interesting in the second one. The diary, Mattson's story is just one page. It's a very short one, and it keeps expanding in the writing. The idea of the mad woman writing this story. It's a very brief moment in Mattson's story, and it expands this writing, this unreliable writing of a character that is fractured. I think that's a very clever piece of writing in the first two stories.
I really like the second story, Needle in the Heart, from which Millicent and Therese is based. Like, that really is, as George said, it's a very short story. And William F. Nolan, just continues to kind of build that out so that you get this kind of dichotomy of the two characters that Karen Black is playing. Millicent, who's our kind of tightly wound, the glasses, the bun, shocked by her slatternly sister, Theresa. We get her side of things, in the form of the diary and what she tells to Theresa's beau. But then, of course, we get to see Theresa in the flesh. And we're like, oh, okay, she does seem like that person who has been described. I forget who mentioned it, but it maybe seems a little predictable as to we know that maybe both of them are the same person. But I think the portrayal is really well done. And the story itself, I think, is laid out quite well. The fact that we happen to get ahead of it, I don't think is truly the fault of our screenwriter or the direction.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, there wasn't faulty writing. There was no faulty writing in that. To consider that the source material is just a page worth of a short story, to expand that is hard. That as I can firsthand, that is hard. and to see that expand in such a way, particularly Therese and Millie, and then her last name, to feel like, okay, so now you figure out which one's really the main personality. But we start with Millie.
Right.
So to us as the audience, we're starting with Millie, who may be the fracture, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
So if she's the fracture, and then the personification, they may both be equally fractured. Like, there's a lot of exploration that you can do when expanding on how the characters are introduced, which is very, very, very intentional. And you can tell that was like, we're going to lead you this direction to make this character seem off kilter. And then you're going to realize that they're the same person. The moment when you can tell, they're like, I know, you must be shocked. We don't look alike at all. And it's like, okay, I know how this is going to play out. Okay, this is cool. That means that to me as a writer, I'm like, all right, if that's obvious up front, there's more to this. And it is that showcase where Karen Black is able to play these two different variations of the same character as opposing people. and then other people are interacting with them separately also. Like the boyfriend that didn't know, that's curious. And the little girl neighbor, like she didn't know.
Right.
Also curious. So that just tells you how fractured they must be if we're taking all things seriously. So that has to be an acknowledgement to the writing.
To speak to the time period and also the medium that it was presented to, that it's for an audience that is, that is maybe not used to this kind of stuff at all either. So the predictability of that storyline might be like, what?
Particularly in 75,
yeah, exactly. And I think about like Salem's Lot, and I think about a lot of the stuff that was made at during that period, that you're being exposed to it. Certainly when I saw it around that time, and a lot of those things, or knew about it around that time, there's an unfolding, very much television of that time period. I mean, it feels a little like the Rockford Files, but scary. Mary Tyler Moore, but scary. All of that stuff, and so those surprises are not expected in many ways because of the medium. And sitting around with your family watching this, can imagine you're sitting around with, and especially in the first one, she sits on the desk. I'm like, what is going on here? that moment of not even, well, it's sort of seduction. You don't know it yet.
Right.
That it's that. It's pretty out there for 1975 television, and I really appreciate that. And I think the shocks of that can sometimes feel like they'll blow away some of the predictability. But I also think, and we all know this, part of the bread and butter of horror is predictability, and the myth that exists. That we're there to watch how this myth that we've seen 1,000 times will unfold with these people. And when you combine those two things, and also on television, I found it really exciting, and also just took me right back to.
Since you showed an affinity for the first one, we will talk about Julie, which is based on Matheson's story, The Likeness of Julie. So we see a teacher played by Karen Black, which I'll be saying a lot over the course of the show, plays a character named Miss Aldrich, who is a teacher at the college. And she is being pursued by a student, Chad, who's played by Skip Burton. As we've kind of alluded, Chad does, he is pursuing her, and he's trying to take her out on a date. We are talking spoilers. He takes her to a drive-in where she, professes that she doesn't really like scary movies. And then he drugs her drink, takes her back, and proceeds to photograph her and presumably have intercourse with her. Going to your point, Brett, this is TV, 1975. What is happening? Like, this is the thing. Like, I think the Zuni Fetish Dog episode gets all the press, but I remember going back and revisiting this movie as a whole and just thinking, wow, that is some really racy stuff for TV in 1975, because it's all implied. We don't see the intercourse take place, but we absolutely know that that's what happened. So yeah, Sako, let me throw the ball to you. And what were some of the things you liked about this episode?
The dichotomy between Chad, the blackmailer, and the teacher, and the oh shit moment was when she broke out the scrapbook. And she was collecting, boys from various colleges and stuff like that. I just loved the monster lying just under the surface and blending in. The first thing that I noticed was the economy at the time was like $1 for 2 drinks at the theater. Are you kidding me?
I also made note of that. I'm like, wow.
The scrapbook at the end really drove it home for me. And I love commiserating with the villain. Mm-hmm. Like I love writing villains where it makes people look inward, because if they commiserate with the villain, how good of a person are they? Right? So it's that emotional connection with the piece, and I feel like they really did that well in the first story.
Yeah. Well, and also we don't know she's the villain until the very end.
Until the very end.
He is
Yeah.
painted as the victim here. And as you said, she is very buttoned up. She completely blends in. No one would ever suspect her. And I think that's what makes it such a great reveal. Moon, how about you? What were your thoughts?
One of my favorite books is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And there's always a part where the mice show up and they're telling the main characters, like, we were in charge of everything on Earth. It was just computer, but we were on Earth to control things. The mice fight with the main character, and they're like, no, humans were experimenting on mice. The mice weren't experimenting on us. And the mice were like, well, what's a better way to control the results of this than to go the wrong way in a maze, or to intentionally eat the wrong piece of cheese? And it just sticks with me because it just reminds me that even the quote unquote victim can be the one in control of things by how they react. If I know that you're essentially like getting off on my torture, I pretend to be tortured to lead you into a false sense of security. And I feel like that's ultimately what Julie was doing. She was behaving in such a manner. I think Brad mentioned it earlier, like, how convenient is it that just after he had this sudden urge to see what's under her clothes, she sits so provocatively on the desk with him center of the room? Like, how convenient. It's one of those things where when you go back and watch it a second time, it's all horror should be watched twice. It's obvious at that point, it's like, wow, she really was in control from the jump. We see with the direction, we see what we're supposed to see. We see him, leading the way as far as trying to pursue her, drugging the drink, getting the room. It seems like he's leading the charge and he feels like he's the one in control. And then you get to the end right there, and I love this power move. He turns on the music and she just walks up, cuts it off. And he's like, hey, what's going on here? And she's like, I don't feel like listening to that anymore. It's like, what do you do when your victim is no longer being victimized? Controlling where the power lies and how we perceive that.
And George pointed out, like, she's also laying out, the Faulkner references, so as to plant the idea in his head.
And I love that that's two layered, because I'm not as familiar with Faulkner. So it's one of those, it works on the surface, but then if you're more informed, it's even deeper. And that's just, it's not elevated horror, but it's just educated horror. And I love educated horror when there's such an extra layer. It's like when you see a movie and it's like, oh man, that was crazy. It's like, did you get the metaphors that were in it? Like, metaphors. And then someone explains it to you and you're like, wow, that's
whole
deep.
New level. Yeah.
Right. And then you have to go back and watch it again, and you have a deeper appreciation for not just the writing, but like the performance and the acting, all the other elements that go into it to portray that.
Brett, we needed that term back when we were talking about It Follows, the elevated horror versus the educated horror. That's brilliant. That's brilliant, Moon.
That's just all of it. You can use as much as you want.
No kidding. Was that fresh invented right here?
Educated horror.
I haven't heard it used out anywhere else.
Wonderful.
So,
you heard it here first.
Yeah.
George, how about you? What's your feeling about this first episode?
One of the things I love is that all those little things the film has fun with. The driving sequence was the Night Stalker, the vampire element in there. I think it's part of the seduction, the lure of the vampire. She creates this ambience, this mood, this preparation. The film has fun with all these little touches, in these little subconscious touches inside it. But one of the things I love, and I think that it happens in all three episodes, is the jarring transitions within the character. The time we see Karen Black she's also then suddenly we see her with a long hair and walking very freely in the room. There's no really build up. There's no really a swift transition to that. It's just wow. It's the same character. It's not another character. It's the same character, and it's like a succubus now, walking and very firm. I love this transition. It happens with Millicent to Therese, and again in Amelia, from Amelia to the final sequence, the final shot. I think those jarring transitions the film has fun with in each segment, and they are jarring. They are strange, and I love this.
Well, we haven't talked a ton about Dan Curtis, our director here, but yeah, he was also the director of The Night Stalker, The Night Strangler, and that is his movie that's up on the drive-in. And I think it's fun that we get a supernatural menace in the vampire in the movie, but we have a very human menace that we're dealing with. In one case, you know, it's the rapist, and then we find out that it's also the murderess, but it's a very human monster.
Yeah.
And then we also get the human monster in the second story, and then we go into the supernatural for the third one. So it's like he takes us on this fun little journey of like, it's just there up on the screen, and then it comes into your house. Brett, thoughts on the first episode?
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about production. I mentioned a little bit too. We've got writing, we've got story, and again, I mentioned I'm a big fan of 70s television, Columbo, Cannon, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, all that stuff. I loved back then when I was a kid. I love it now, still watch it. And I feel like there's three things I want to mention. The first being the production value on it is so television at that time. There was a moment they're just looking through the pictures. He gives her the picture she's looking through, and I'm like, what is? You kind of can see what one of the pictures is. I was like, what is that? What is that? And I paused it on that, and it's a picture of a guy in a tuxedo. I'm like, oh my gosh, they couldn't even get. I don't know what they're doing. Like, it was like a headshot of a magician, and I'm like, that is so of this period, and I love that not so great aspect of the amount of money they had to spend on a TV show was this much. And it doesn't compare to like the features of that time period. It feels like TV that way. Secondly, within television production, we see a lot of people we would recognize from detective series of that time period too, including all of them, everybody, from the directors to the designers to just everybody, all of the actors you would have recognized from series, and you would either clock them as bad guys, clock them as victims, clock them as extras, or anything. You would have clocked them as somebody you just saw the night before or the week before in another series. But in this scenario, you're like, oh, I know that guy. He played the murderer. He played the guy whose brother was blah, blah, blah last week on Columbo. But in this scenario, they upturn it, as I said before. They make it into something like, oh, he's always the bad guy who at the end gets arrested or who isn't caught or something happens. But in this case, he gets poisoned and dies at the end. And we don't see that at all. And those are sort of the actors, the production, and then sort of this connection to television in the period, which I absolutely just adore. And the pace of it, the driving, as George said, that there's these things that are sort of standard for shows of that period, detective shows of that period, procedurals of that period. That first one presents itself as a procedural, and then it just tumbles down. You never see the person being punished except in a way that's like, oh, the victim's going to punish, or the victim's going to punish, which never happens on those shows. It's always, we're going to solve this case and move on to the next week. But in this case, no, he's going to die.
Yeah. Well, she's going to move on to the next victim.
And move on to the next one too. And it's another guy we've seen 1,000 times.
Gregory Harrison, exactly.
Harrison. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got the guy we just saw 2 weeks ago on Mary Tyler Moore or something like that. It's these players. They're all the same people, and that they're there. It was great.
Go ahead.
I would like to mention that I have a lot of experience with dissociative identity disorder, and I feel like they really drove it home both in the first story and the second story. So the director obviously had a lot of experience with the disorder. I feel like it was accurate. You know what I mean? It's like I felt validated a little bit seeing it in cinema.
That's good to hear, because I know that that's not always presented very well, especially in the early days.
Particularly in horror.
Yeah,
Particularly
it becomes very convenient. It becomes a device by which you can tell your story. Brett, going back to kind of the idea of production and that musical score by Bob Colbert.
That too.
Like, It's
Oh my
you
God.
hear that kind of like low bassoon
Yeah.
show up in like every mystery,
it's
every
Streets of San
horror.
Francisco. It's like, as I was noticing, I'm like, I could be watching almost anything, and it's just
Yes.
like a layer just plopped right on top of this. But it's not about those things that it's usually about. It's so, as Sako said, it's like it's deeper than that, and it is about other stuff that those shows are often never about. Not Columbo, that's a great show, but a lot of those really bad shows, some other shows that are terrible, try, and this one succeeds, but with that layer of like, this show, people watching it, it looks like everything you just watched before, the Friday night movies or whatever, and here it is.
Well, and you mentioned that early on that I think familiarity is kind of key to this. We have to want to recognize this taste. We go, okay, this is that thing that I like. And then you can add a little spice to it here and there. But you have to have that sense of this is what you came for.
Yeah.
And it delivers that. And then it provides, because this is an anthology, so it's going to be kind of like the Twilight Zone. You're going to have a little twist at the end of each one of those. And
I'll say one other thing. And I mentioned Salem's Lot, the miniseries that was happening just a few years after that, right? Because I remember as a kid watching that. And that's Starsky, Hutch, David Soul, right? It's David Soul, and also the music, the production, all of that stuff was very similar to this series, and worked too for us watching it. We're like, this is different, but it's also like the made-for-TV movies I have been watching too. And I think it's one of the reasons this one has stuck around, and that one has stuck around too. They remake things. They did a second one in the 90s, right? I didn't see Trilogy of Terror 2. I always wonder with this one and Salem's Lot, why are people still like, that one's better and that one's better? I think it might be because what you just described. It's like it hangs on to something that is vital to its creation.
Yeah, I think that speaks a lot to the fact that this is made for TV, and studios have always done this, and they will continue to do that. They still do it now. If something works elsewhere, they want that, but different. They want to do that thing that works over here to the left. They wanted to work over here for them.
It's the nature of TV, right?
Yeah. Like right now on TV, how many like FBI type shows are there?
Right.
There's like what 4 or 5 spinoffs from 911, and then there's like hospital shows.
All the Law and Orders.
All the Law and Orders, but Law and Order is still so popular. It's like 20 plus seasons, but now you have Chicago Medic because ER worked so well, or Chicago Fire, and then you have 911, and then you have
that's maybe why X-Files worked so well at the time too, because it looked like those series that we were all watching on television. But
you get like procedural shows and sci-fi.
Yeah.
So if you like the Outer Limits, you can like X-Files. If you like police shows, you can like X-Files. And X-Files stays super popular. It's one of those things like I need that from over there over here. So my point of all that was like you mentioned, that sense of familiarity, that kind of formulaic thing. People need that. It makes money. And that's ultimately a studio's point, is to make money.
Right. And like Sako said, but it has to have meaning to it. I was reading an article about a recent horror film that mentioned this, and it said they did that, what you just described, but they forgot the meaning, to add this sort of meaning to it, that it's just, it is just the monster, it is just the images, but it doesn't have the meaning. And I think this one does invest in that. It seems like they cared about that a lot, maybe from the source material.
And I think it's where we get things like elevated horror now. There's so many different layers and tie-ins to things. And that's why elevated horror has become like this little side monster of a subgenre in its own right. Because now we are intentionally, like the people who loved horror in the 70s and the 80s and 90s, we've gotten much older, we're much smarter, we've experienced life now. And so for us, horror has to be deeper than the stuff we've already seen. It's like we can't, like the 5 of us can't sit back and watch something like, all right, I've seen that before. It's not going to have the same impact. Like, ooh, that makes me think I can relate to this now. I see this movie where it's about a family that's dysfunctional, not crazy dysfunctional, just lightly dysfunctional, like most families are. And most families are lightly dysfunctional. And it's like, I can relate to this. This feels important to me. There is, like you said, meaning. There's something else. There's purpose to
was
this
talking
narrative.
to a friend of mine about this, and it's like the spiritification, spirit Halloween storification, which I love. I love the spirit, but it's like people writing with the idea of having that mask, or excuse me, studios producing with the idea of having that mask, having that apron, having that dishcloth with the thing on it, as opposed to that happening organically. And it feels like there's a little bit of that happening right now. It's like, this is all you need is this thing. And I feel like this, like the reason it's stuck around is it has that, but it also has other extra special stuff.
Where the writing should lead to the marketing instead of the marketing creating the writing.
Let's jump ahead to our second story, Millicent and Therese. This is, again, based on Matheson's very short story, Needle in the Heart. And it features Karen Black in a dual role, playing a spinster sister, and she disapproves greatly of her sister Teresa, our blonde-wigged version of Karen Black. Brett, let's go ahead and start things off with you. What are your thoughts on this one?
Is that the guy who plays the doctor? Is he
George Gaines?
George Gaines. It is George Gaines. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's George Gaines from television, from many roles in television.
And Tootsie and Police Academy. And
these character actors who populate this world make everything more special here too, because it's like playing against type, playing into type. And it is, for me, the one that I'm like, that one's all right. And Karen Black feels like she has to push a little bit in some directions to make this work exactly. But it feels a little horror bedtime story to me in some ways too, which I really appreciate. One thing that happened with the Trilogy of Terror, when my daughter was, 5 or 6, was spending the night at a friend's house, an adult friend's house, like an aunt, play aunt sort of house, and she was like, I want to show her scary movies. Show her a scary movie. I'm like, she's like 6. And I think she showed her Trilogy of Terror. And my daughter freaked out about the last one. Anyway, but I think this one was one that had a stronger impact just with its content and story-wise. It felt a little bit like Ribbon Around the Neck story, those sort of scary stories you tell in the dark-ish too, but for adults. And it feels like a good middle story. It also, the one thing I really love about it is, and this is across the board, but this one a lot, is everybody really sinks their teeth into it. The actors really are going for it. I appreciate that. Just like you said, Doctor, before, this is television. People didn't do this too often, really act their butts off. And this one, they're in it to win it.
George, how about you?
I think Brett said that was some kind of novelty, the dual personality and identity disorder in an ABC film of the week at the time. And it's true, because we had split personality films in the 50s, no? Eleanor Parker in Lizzie, or Joanne Woodward in The Three Faces of Eve. But at that point, it was rather not, we didn't see that much. Sybil would come 1 year later, was a steady field. I think it was, and I think Karen Black was on record saying that she chose specifically to do Trilogy of Terror because she could play 4 roles, not 3, and especially Millicent, which she had lots of fun with. Because it was kind of something she would never be able to do again, and she never did before. Some kind of spinster and very closed and very timid and very. So I think that's an aspect of the film that's very strong. The idea of the split personality and the identity disorder, and I think she does very well the transition between one character and the other. It's a very good middle story.
Agreed. Moon.
I hadn't thought about it that way, but it does make a very good middle story. Like, if you're going to have 3 parts, it wouldn't be the one I would open with, and it definitely wouldn't be the one I close with. This was structured very well as an overall trilogy. But looking at this particular story, I had some ups and downs with this. It wasn't a perfect movie for me, but at the same, because I'm extra critical as a filmmaker. But it was so good because there were elements where you are taking these 2 characters, these 2 sisters, and they are so opposite of each other. But again, we see it from the beginning. They are the same person. So there's no big secret reveal at the end, but it's not the intention. And it's like where we kind of see it as like that didn't really fool me. It's like there's another thing at hand.
That's
here.
right.
And that's where you get that next layer of writing and storytelling and directing and production, this wasn't about telling that secret. There'd be a lot more hiding it otherwise. This was about showing how far apart this one person has split. To see not only the split and the change in the personalities, but to watch the fracture come apart. Because while I never had DID, dissociative identity disorder, I worked with someone for over a year that did. So I've gotten a chance to work alongside someone with this disorder who had, X number of personalities, and over time they worked to, for lack of a better term, to eliminate each other. Usually in therapy, they try to
reintegrate. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's what this looks like. Obviously, this is horror, so we have to take an extreme level to this, because that's what we do in horror.
Extreme. Yeah.
Right. Well, we have to turn it up a little bit. And this is what this is actually showing. This isn't showing the secret reveal of, oh, they're the same person. This is showing a fractured mind reintegrating. And how does one personality, which there are sometimes, one personality that dominates over at least another, or in the case of my coworker, there was about 3 or 4 that held the light a little bit longer than the others. And the reintegration, this was Millie's way of reintegrating with Therese. And so it's a lot deeper than that. Like I said, you know a little bit here, and you can watch it and be all right. When you think a little bit deeper, when you know a little bit more, it's just one extra level. Like George was talking about with understanding Faulkner better. This is just one extra layer that the more you know or what you've experienced gives you a little bit extra something to this story.
Sako?
This was the story that really drove home the understanding of multiple personalities and dissociative identity disorder, and what reintegration looks like, and the impact it can have on the people around them, and how extreme compartmentalizing can be. That alone made it more interesting to watch, like the child not understanding that the person was ill, the boyfriend being super confused, the doctor being concerned, like he understood what was going on, but we didn't know that he understood until the last scene.
Right.
It kind of looked like they were stringing him along, but really he was playing along, right, in hopes to get closer so that he could help.
Talked earlier, the previous segment, about kind of like the adult themes at play here. We have a character in Millicent who has slept with her father and murdered her mother. You have to create another character that committed those acts, because you can't live with yourself having done them. Again, this is just not something that, because I always go back to the last segment, I wasn't watching this segment over and over again. That only lit up for me like maybe a couple of viewings ago. There's matricide and incest going on, and that's why we have to create a second character. It's not just because she's wacky, she's not just a person with split personality for the sake of our viewing entertainment.
Right.
Like they actually justify, and that's William F. Nolan. Again, he's adapting a very short piece. He created that. That whole thing is created for us, so that there is a reason why the Therese character exists.
We haven't touched on the supernatural element of that whole story. They find her dead on the ground with the pin in the doll's chest.
Right.
And all of the mention of witchcraft and spells and control and all that kind of stuff. That becomes such a big part of this too, because you're like, well, how did she die? Oh, it was actually a supernatural. She supernaturally killed.
The voodoo
herself.
works. Yeah,
exactly. The voodoo works, and I think
puppets are great. Yeah,
I know exactly. And so that's like a running theme in these horror stories is the supernatural element of how this works, and we're heading toward a supernatural situation. So it being the middle story and a dose of that with a dose of the reality you're talking about is, I think, incredibly important to get us there. I remember as a kid reading a lot of like anthology books of short stories of authors all over the place, and it feels like it's from like a story from that book, with that attention paid toward the voodoo doll that is the murder weapon at the end.
I feel like it's crazy how the voodoo doll doesn't have, like, just now came up in conversation.
I know,
about
right?
this. The doctor plays is very important. He is managing from the outside these two personalities, probably working towards a sense of reintegration. And when you go into understanding DID, it's a result of trauma. We're hearing this interpretation of how things played. We don't know that's exactly how it played out, but this creation, these traumatic events could have led to the split, the fracture in the first place. When you take a time to like take a step back and really look at it, it really is a very maturely written story. There are so many layers to the actual writing of this. That on the surface, fun little story, fits in the middle of a trilogy. It's great. When you really take the time to like stop and analyze it, you're like, wow. And then after all of that, there's voodoo.
Yeah.
Like we didn't even mention what was going on with Julie to create the mind control that she used against Jack. We didn't even talk about that. Again, the mentioning of the supernatural elements throughout all three pieces, particularly the first two that are subtle, leading to the, like you said, supernatural in the third. But yeah, this is random mind control that she uses that Julie used in the first piece. We didn't even talk about that. That's how subtle it was.
And some poison, and conjuring this poison that just kind of you choke and you die. Sort of.
Right. And then you get into this story where it's like, yeah, all this stuff is happening, but voodoo killed her. And she killed
a
her
whole
sister.
Library of Satanism and things.
Right. She killed her sister, who is herself, which is how they died. We barely talked about that. There's so much else going on.
Did anybody else reflect on their own bookcase when they were? I was like, what do I have? Oh, I do have a few of those books.
I was like, I wouldn't have that book.
Yeah. George, do you have any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
Maybe I'm older now, but this late view of the film, I felt a little sadness, undercurrent of sadness in this story, in the media too. They're very tragic characters. They're very sad ones. The way she hurts herself, and it reminded me a lot of Gogol's Diary of a Madman, who starts with relating his state. At the very end, he's completely lost it. He's fractured beyond belief. I think she ends in voodoo.
Yeah,
that's her end in creating a doll to kill herself. It's a very sad little undercurrent that permeates the which I've never felt before. I think this late viewing, it felt multi-year to me. The sadness of the character.
You mentioning that makes me think of the Julie character. I mean, there's a sadness there because
sadness. Yes, I think so.
She's having this. She's a serial murderer.
Well, not even. I think she's cursed. It's a curse she carries with her. I think that there's a sadness in all three characters.
And I think, she's trying to fill something in herself by committing creating these scenarios that end in murder, so it's like, there's something.
She's bored. She mentions it. She said she was bored. How else do you to imagine to be cursed in such a way that like this is how you have to entertain yourself.
Yeah,
this is just what you kind of do.
This is the only thing that gives you the kick.
Almost vampirically.
This is how define. This is why it's horror and not just supernatural. My favorite is curses. If all three contain curses, then all three have to end tragically.
Yeah.
They can't. They end in the darkness. All three of them. So they're not like. And then I realized I was okay because I met this blah 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 and I was fine. And I can move on with my life now. No, all three do. And of course curses can't be undone, or they're really, really hard to be undone. And George, you're totally right that because of these curses, we're going to get to the big curse that transforms somebody entirely into a monster visually in the third one.
Well, let's move on to that third one, because this is the showcase. This is the one that people, when they talk about this movie, they are talking about the one with the ZUNI doll. The entire movie is a showcase for Karen Black, but as somebody pointed out earlier, she's having to do everything here. Like, she creates the mom, she creates the boyfriend, she creates, the reaction to the doll. Like, it is Karen Black 100% right down the line. And it's really also just super fun to watch. People's thoughts on the last one, which is Amelia, based on Prey. Sako, how about we kick things off with you?
The leading up to the chase scene, one Who talks to their mother that way? Holy cannoli. And to the protections and stuff, I was like, okay, so she has to take off the protections. No, they just fall off. They just like fall to the table, and he skitters off.
Just to clarify, do you feel like it's a little convenient that the chain just falls off? Like the fact that like, she didn't actually bring this on herself, the fact that it just kind of, as we say, she's cursed, but not through her own actions.
Right. The chase scene was pure gold. I loved the chase scene. The problem solving that the fetish had was like logical. Like,
Yep.
you know, you put it in the suitcase and it cuts its way out. Yeah, of course.
You lock
And then
the door,
she tries
it can open
to-
the door
It can open
Yeah.
doors.
It opened
It
doors.
can open locked doors.
and
There's a lot of-
rides in on the doorknob.
It does. You're right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
And
God.
there are animated gifs of her running from and throwing herself to the floor. I'm here for it. I'm
Thank
here
you for your
it.
service, Karen Black, falling down like 8,000 times over the course of the filming. Moon, how about you?
To answer Sako's question, daughters who have gotten so sick and tired of their mom's BS. That's who talks to their moms that way. I have friends whose moms are just, there's a lot. So sometimes like, Mom, no, this is how it is. And so you get that sometimes. But that goes to Karen Black, where you can tell that this character of Amelia has been dealing with this mom character acting this way for so long. And that is easily conveyed in how she responds. Because again, it's just Karen Black. In this case, it's just Amelia. There's no one else in this entire piece but Amelia. You have to learn the personalities of these other characters through her reaction. You can tell that the goal wasn't, again, this is not to create an Oscar-winning masterpiece. That was not the goal of this at all. But it was fun. It is quite convenient that this thing just falls off. This chain just falls off. But Amelia is very, very nonchalant about all this because she's not that far away from the doll when the chain falls. Like it's like almost like a second or two after she lets go of it. She's no further than you don't hear a chain hitting your table when nothing else is in the room. And then it's just like there's a door at the end when she was trying to escape.
Yes, we'll talk about the door.
Okay, I'll pause then. But there are elements where it's just like, okay, all right. You know what? I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the ride. Like a doll on the doorknob. I'm here for the ride. Let's go with it.
George.
Well, watching Amelia, well, we know what's going to come. Now, the chasing and you know it will be fun and grueling and it's the bravado of the sequence, the sound design, which I'm sure we'll be talking about, and the camera, everything. But I was impressed by how much I liked the first half of it.
Yes.
Yes.
The two phone calls, they are impressive not only from an acting point of view, but how sustained it is from in a dramatic terms. It's almost like cocktail level, the human voice. Now you have this character so fragile and so overwhelmed and oppressed, and she's an open vessel. She becomes an open vessel for the ZUNI in front of her eyes.
Yeah.
She opens herself up. Because she exposes, she's so vulnerable in that phone call, and I'm not even sure the boyfriend exists. She might even be dating to avoid the mother. You get into her mind. It's a very immersive way, it's brief but so immersive the way Dan Curtis and Karen Black created this character, the vulnerability of the character. I think it's a brilliant piece of acting in that first half.
That phone call is a 3-minute unbroken take.
Yeah, it's perfect.
You know, you just don't see that, especially not in TV. You know, you're going to have cuts, but just to have her sitting there on that couch talking to an imaginary voice, I like that. That's pretty incredible. Brett, how about you?
Just what everybody's been talking about, but George, that the why today of it all, I think the vulnerability, but I think too her standing up to her mom, as Sako and both Suck on the Moon have both pointed out, I think gives her that strength that lets you know she's vulnerable, but she's also she's at a breaking point and she's pushing back. And so you have to earn that ability to avoid the monster which is coming. And we're going to see that, she has these weak parts of herself, but she also has this strength that she just found. And tonight's the night when she found that strength. So maybe she can overcome this monster, the possibility of her overcoming the monster, because it's a curse, because a chain does fall off and all those things. Probably not. But just like with all curse movies, we want to see if you're not going to be dragged down to hell, all those things. We want to make sure you're going to be okay. And if you set her up with that phone call, with the possibility of a boyfriend, her life changing her life, that she can live in this apartment on her own, that she can cook a steak on her own, that she knows where all her stuff is in her house, and she's here. I found myself really looking at her apartment as opposed to the first one's apartment, which was like, what is going on in here? But where she was living with her roommate, that whole thing, we didn't even talk about that. But,
so 70s.
Yeah, it was very 70s. But she was like alone. She had her own place. Her hair looked great. Her outfit was fantastic. All of these things that she was very put together. And as a single working woman in 1975, she had some strength. And relating it back to Mary Tyler Moore again, I felt like I knew who this person was or was becoming. And so when that monster showed up, the little monster showed up, I'm like, she's got this. She's going to get the knife. She's going to be able to do this. If she didn't fall down so much, then maybe. But I mean, speaking as someone who falls down sometimes, I get it. I get it that you can fall down, especially when you're scared. But that's where I sort of understood her to be, that set up to her being strong. And then we meet that little guy, and all of his ability is crazy. That's the thing too. It's like every obstacle. It's like this little monster's done this 1,000 times before. You're not going to fuck with it.
Yeah, there are so many elements when you do look at the beginning of the movie, and it tells one story. But again, in these phone calls, as we're relating her to her mom, it does show this this history of weakness, because she's kind of submitted to her mom for so long, and now she's like, there's things in my life that I get to take control of, and Mom, you're going to have to kind of deal with this. But we also can't forget that there's the part where she concedes, tells the boyfriend, hey, I'm not coming. Like, who says it to your mother? Kids who are trying. It's like they try to talk back to their mom, and it doesn't work.
It's true. And then she's going to go back and get some revenge.
Like, okay, I'm sorry, but
later too.
Mom, we'll go ahead and go. And then but I mentioned that for that reason, because who ultimately becomes the final victim here in the story? It's the mom.
It's going to be mom,
right? And that's how we play, like, that part is the underlying story that we kind of ignore because the doll's so much fun. It's she has this issue with mom, where mom's being sort of oppressive, and she's finally standing up to her mom, and then she loses out on was probably a really nice guy because of the pressure her mom put on it. So who's her first victim going to be now that she is, spoiler, that she's now possessed by the doll? It's going to be her mom. She invites the mom over, which is convenient because it's like, hey, Mom, I'm going to give you my address to come see me, but I can't tell the cops where I am. Don't give me. There are so many elements of this in the writing that I'm just like, okay.
Yep. And I've wrestled with that one for many years now. So here's my justification, and hopefully it'll help you as well. So she's talking to the operator at that point, and she just wants to get to the police.
Right.
So she's like, don't worry about that. You need to get me the police. I'll tell them where I live. I don't need to tell you where I live. I need to get to the police. And that's what she keeps repeating is, just give me the police. Just give me the police. So it's a weak justification, but it's what I've got to hang on to.
1975 justification.
That's right. That's right.
And you got to go through.
And you talk about the door, again, that's another one. It's like, how come she can't get out of her house? Like, why is she locked in her house? And you see her when she's possessed, she breaks the lock off. So I get the sense that it has somehow jammed, like it should just lift and slide and come back down. But for whatever reason, it's not moving. And that's why she's stuck, is that it's malfunctioning. And again, it's a loose little justification, but it's all I've got to hang on to.
That is the weirdest lock. That's like a lock you'd have like in a basement door. It's like, let me just stick this on here again.
Sacco said the magic words, and that was problem solving, because what makes this episode work is that you have Karen Black and the ZUNI doll continuing to level up and meet each other, and they throw an obstacle in the way and they overcome it, and they consistently are just leveling up throughout the entire, and it's done with such energy. It's done with such power. Again, Karen Black is selling this thing, but you know what? That ZUNI doll is doing its job of selling it as well, because we have that incredible sound design of it doing its war cry, and the camera work of it just like joggling in front of the camera. Like, that thing is energized literally to the teeth. And we get to watch those two vying against each other for 15 minutes. And it's incredible, because things do keep shifting. And we go, well, how's he going to get out of that suitcase? How is she going to get out of the bathroom? How is he going to get out of the oven? You know, it's like, there's so many great sequences that just bounce off of each other.
I hadn't thought about that oven. It set up a 70s and 80s trope of putting monster in appliance. I remember as a kid, I watched some made-for-TV movie where the mom took the Spider-Man doll and put it in the oven and melted it, and the kid freaked out, and it scared the crap out of me. I don't know why, but it really did. It's like they showed the Spider-Man melting, and it was really scary. And this one too, it's like, I know how I'll get away from this monster. I'll go in my kitchen and do this to it, and these dangerous things, either the garbage disposal or the blender or the microwave or all these things. And I love that that's part of it. It's like, technology will kill you.
Yeah.
But it's all done intelligently. Like that was like I always say that horror begins when the mistake is made. And there really ultimately weren't mistakes made besides buying the ugly
or opening the oven, right? Opening the oven was like, is it done? Oh no.
Oh yeah. To check on it.
Well, besides it was going to happen eventually. It's going to happen eventually. But again, there really weren't a lot of mistakes made. And I normally do say that, you know, somewhere where you watch the story, someone does something really stupid, and that opens the door for the horror. You turn down the road towards the scary town, and now the people in the scary town know you're there and they come after you. Well, that was stupid. You shouldn't have done that. There were no mistakes made. There
let me ask you this one. Trying to grab a blade with your fingers?
Yes.
Not advisable.
Well, but that's not what... There were a lot of things that didn't work and that weren't exactly the smart. But the horror didn't start at a mistake. But like as they are trying to one up each other, the doll and Amelia, there was this sense of, I'm going to outsmart this girl, and I'm going to get her, and I'm going to outsmart this doll. She didn't underestimate the doll. Right. She treated the doll as an intelligent entity, and the doll was like, she thought she could get past with a locked door. Give me a second. I've never experienced doors before like this, but let me figure this one out. And he did. I wish we could have seen that a little bit better, but we didn't. But I want to know how the doll did it. I want to know how he unlocked these doors, because I know those little push button doors. There's something on the other side of that door. There's a hole.
He's in there picking
he's got a little spear, and he's just trying to like poke the hole. Yeah. Like I want to see him like with the little hole.
He has a voodoo pin from the previous.
There you go.
There you go. In the pockets that he clearly doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
George, we haven't heard from you yet. What are your thoughts on this one?
It's exciting, it's energetic, it's scary, but it's so funny too. That sound design is
so funny.
Insane. The sounds of the ZUNI, it keeps building on over excitement, and she's frenetic. The doll is frenetic and sexually assaulting, and it keeps so many sounds. It's very, very funny too. I think it's a very interesting way of keeping afloat many feelings and many types of scariness. And I think it's an incredible piece.
I was reading something that the arms and legs of the doll kept falling off when they were trying to work with, and that they were having such a good time and laughing their butts off so much. Because that doll just kept falling apart every time they tried to do something. You can kind of tell as they moved. It's like, blah, 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 blah.
And it's great. And the difference between Amelia versus the other two pieces is that it moves so much faster. There's
Yeah.
so much. I think that's one of the elements that made it, one, a great final piece for a trilogy as far as presentation is concerned, and two, makes it so memorable because it moves faster than the other ones. Not just in so much the story pacing, but visually. You have that camera set low at the height of the doll, running after Amelia. She falls and it cuts here and cuts there. There's so many quicker cuts in the third piece versus the first two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell that. I think Brett mentioned towards the beginning of our conversation that there was just something done differently in this third piece that you could tell that it kind of stands out.
You got
It's
one
these
actor, one
elements.
location. You got
It's
one doll, and
I can tell
that.
you, we filmed. I've made a short film where we had a few number of actors. We had one literal location, and you can work either inside or outside. That's all you got. And sometimes you don't get an outside, and you have to really amp up things when the setting can't be the actor, and you can't have a whole lot of movement with the setting. The acting has to come from the characters, and we use fast movements, fast cutting here in this case with Amelia. And that's what makes it so exciting. So much energy is in that movement. It's so much fun in that case. And I think that's why I think that's one of the reasons why it stands out so
I
much.
want to take that time to kind of throw a shout out to our cinematographer, Paul Lohman, because he is the one like providing that energy and providing the framing for, to make that doll come to life. And Lohman had like an amazing career. He worked with Altman numerous times. He worked with Mel Brooks. He was on Mommy. He did Mommy Dearest. He did Coffee, the blaxploitation film. Like he was somebody who was a great cinematographer, and he could adapt to the task at hand. Any Altman film, that's going to require all that deep focus and pulling in and out. But yeah, he's incredible. This segment in particular, because they had created a little track where the ZUNI doll would run on it, and that was where you're talking about where the arms and legs would fall off. But like it would be running through the carpet so that Karen Black could run away from it.
Yeah.
And it just gives this inanimate object a life that we as an audience buy into. What some of you said, Brett, about, her trying to grab the knife. Yes, that's ridiculous. At the same time, it's the perfect thing for a horror film to do, is to watch somebody do something that you're like, oh, that's a terrible idea. And you're watching them and going, is it going to work out for them? Like what's going to happen?
We know how that feels too. We know how we've all
had that. Yeah, exactly.
And we know what that is too. Yeah.
Familiarity, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I also love that biting on the neck. I mean, that one, and if it's Kermit biting Vincent Price on Sesame Street, or if it's this, we all know that one. And he's finally got a hold of her too. And I just love that moment when it's like hanging off her neck.
That cinematographer had so much fun basically crawling around on the floor or getting the angles needed to chase after her at such a low angle, chasing her through the living room. It had to have been so fun to create. Both on her part and also the cinematographer's part.
Doctor, do you know anything about the person who made
I do doll? Actually. I was Eric von Bülow is our puppeteer, or the one who created the and it's such an amazing visage. You talked, Brett, about creating the item for the marketing. Like this is such an amazing bit of craftsmanship. Bülow didn't do a ton more in cinema. The two major credits that he has are two of my favorite schlocky 70 films, Empire of the Ants and Food of the Gods. He creates the big chicken puppet head, the ants. That's his craftsmanship. And again, the fact that he's 3 for 3, I'm just like, Eric von Bülow can do no wrong in my book.
And since we're praising technicians, we must praise also Michael Westmore, the makeup artist.
Yes.
That final shot, the teeth in the final shot, it's absolutely unforgettable.
And apparently that was Karen Black's idea, something that she proposed. She's like, what would it be like, Dan, if I actually have teeth at the end? And I have to say, I have never even considered the possibility that this isn't literally happening. The idea that this is happening in her mind had never occurred to me until this conversation. So I thank you for that. I'm going to still err on the side of it being an actual ZUNI doll that comes to life, because that's more fun for me. But it never even crossed my mind that maybe she's just lost it,
a ZUNI doll of the mind. Yeah.
and that she'll be waiting, looking like Amelia, and she will stab her mother to death. It's not like she's undergone some transformation. It's just a mental break.
I want to know if she goes into her mom's, if she runs like that when she gets there.
I hope so. What are people's thoughts? Do we think that this is literally happening, or do we think? I guess, what's your preference? Is it literally happening, or is it a mental break?
As much as Chucky is literal and everything else is literal, Gremlin's literal, I'm on board.
You're on the
I'm
side.
more literal.
Yeah.
It's more, again, like you said, it's more fun that way. If you assume that this is just some girl who's like, I'm gonna come home, I'm gonna take a little bath, I'm gonna go out with this fella, have a nice little dinner, spend the evening with him. This is gonna be a good night, and it ends with her psychotically killing her mother. Like that's,
or a possessed version. Yes, a possessed version.
Yeah.
Right, and I feel like that's a lot more fun.
Possession has been was a theme of all three, wasn't it?
I know, and I don't know that I had ever realized that before. So this is why I like having these conversations, is so that I can see a movie through other people's eyes. There is a 96 sequel, Trilogy of Terror 2, which, while I don't think it's as good as this one, it does follow the same format where it has one actress playing in all three parts. And it's actually quite enjoyable.
Who is the actress?
Lisette Anthony.
Lisette Anthony.
Lisette
Yes.
Anthony.
That one's worth checking out as well. I think you could probably find it on YouTube or something. Let's circle back around for final thoughts on Trilogy of Terror 50th anniversary. George, let's start with you.
It's a great film to return to, because the first time one sees Trilogy of Terror, you got impressed by what is obvious in it. But in a second view, something becomes more clear and not so clear, and you start questioning things. And I think it's a film that demands, which I never thought of. It gives regards to a second viewing. Gives it's a fruitful second view, or third view, or fourth view, etc. It's nice to come back to it.
Shako.
The stories had a very specific order in which it had to be portrayed, and it nailed it. It almost seemed to like start off easy and then kind of like skirt around it a little bit and then peak and then drop off, which you kind of want in a horror movie. So I think it succeeded, and learning that it was a TV movie just like floors me. Like I thought it would have been straight to video or something like that. Considering the content being on, I'm assuming, prime time, the family watching these movies, they're very adult concepts.
Yeah.
I think in the 70s and 80s, we kids were kind of like exposed to more stuff like that. I think it would stick with someone who is still forming their brain.
Moon, how about you?
So what I like about this, particularly watching it now, is the understanding that horror is not a monolith, never was, and never will be. That you can have, not every horror has to work through a certain formula. Not every horror has to work like the last one you saw, and the next one doesn't have to be like this. And I think what's really fun about all three of these pieces, and then the three of them put together and presented as a trilogy, you can just have fun with horror. Horror is going to look a little different, whether it's like Last House on the Left or something like Scream. These are going to be different movies. And horror is all horror, and it all works. And what I love about this trilogy is it's fun. It makes horror fun. You can just enjoy a crazy, weird-looking doll chase a woman in her apartment, and you are wondering, why is the door locked like that? And did she get in the bath? Like, what was happening?
She drowns it, or tries to drown it.
Yeah, but there's like a whole thing. There's a whole series of like sub questions.
A belief that it breathes. Like,
yeah. When you're watching it too deeply, it's like you dialed 1 for the last 6 digits of that phone number when you called your mom, like, because that's how rotary phones work. And then you called your mom later on, and you were all over the place. Your mom's got 2 different numbers. It's weird. I'm a filmmaker. I pay attention to those little things. But again, regardless, it's fun to watch.
And Brett.
I go back to a little bit to what Sako was talking about, and that is this was on TV. I like a Friday night movie or Saturday night at the movies or whatever it was on, and there were millions of people watching it because you watched it, and you also watched it with your family. There was no cable, there was nothing. It was this or other two shows that maybe in reruns, because a lot of times they would show these it was March. I guess they would have been new episodes, but it'd been like later seasons, things like that. It was snuck in. And speaking of sneaking things in, there was a giant goal among people who worked in television who were being a little subversive to sneak stuff like this into your house. And this is a big old sneak in of horror and psychological horror and really super scary stuff. I remember watching the movie Bug with the bugs that catch on fire.
Sure.
With my dad. I think it might have been the first horror movie I watched in the basement of my house with my dad on television. And I was completely scared out of my mind. We did not stop watching it, but I was scared out of my mind. And it felt like they snuck that in too. They're like, and then there's this movie here where the bugs catch everybody on fire, and people like on fire in the movie. And this felt like that they were using the, in many ways, cheap schlock of family television to present something that's outside the bounds of and interest you and be fun. Because that's the other thing I think is incredibly cool. And when you just pointed this out, is that how fun it is. One of the things that's really important when it comes to horror, especially because of the way it can turn people off, if you find an element of fun with a group or your family or whatever it is, as you're experiencing it, you're going to want that again. You're going to want that again. And this one supplied that. And I felt like everybody who was making it was having a good time. That last image of her with those teeth, with that spinning that thing is so fun.
Stabbing the floor.
And you are like, I don't know, 5 as I would have been. And you turn to your dad or your sister's covering your face. And your dad's like, ah. It's like, oh my gosh, I've never experienced this before with my family. We're all like experiencing something and our emotions are heightened and blah, blah, blah. That I think is like a big win for Trilogy of Terror for sure.
Moon, you mentioned the things you have to kind of suspend your disbelief for. This is so outrageous, especially the last segment. It's so outrageous and it's so energetic that you're willing to just switch everything off and go, yes, give me more of this battle between Karen Black and the ZUNI doll.
Yeah.
And to your point, Brett, like this is the reason why I've shown this movie, this segment, the last one, to so many people, because it is fun and allows them to get that sense, that little thrill of being scared, but also feeling safe. Like this is not going to happen to me. I'm not actually worried about a doll coming to life and chasing me around my house. And the fact that it's done with the energy that it is, and it's done at the level that it is, that allows people to be like, you know what? Maybe I do like some scary movies. And it allows the door to open up just that little bit.
Yeah. And there's something that happened that I hadn't realized till now is it's also genre. And as a kid who read a lot of horror comic books, exclusively horror comic books, nobody was making anything for me on television, really, back then. And for this to pop up, it goes back to X-Files, all of this stuff, anything that would pop up that was like that. Star Trek reruns were about as close as I could get then, or any of a number, or, like a Halloween episode or something. But this was for me, and they made it, and I was like, I'm in. And so we have that, a lot of that now. You can watch anything, but then you had to, like, in March, you said,
right around Easter, I'm sure.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Some programmer was like going, why should we wait until Halloween when everybody's doing this stuff? Let's do this right now.
Yeah.
You made a good point. Doc. And you were saying that this was safe. One of the scariest movies for me, believe it or not, is The Strangers. The original one. And what's so scary about The Strangers is that there was no supernatural element to it.
Right. This
was literally just 3 people who had a wild idea. I answered the door the first time, and now they decided to terrorize me. This can happen to literally anyone at literally any time, anywhere in the world. You don't need like a weird cultural thing to happen or any weird set of laws or any kind of weird. It can happen to literally anywhere, like anywhere in the world. This cannot. So that's one of the things that you can kind of get away with by, all right, this is kind of scary, but you ain't got to worry about this, right? Like no one's got None of your teachers are going to have mind control. Chances are the lady down the street just literally has a weird sister. It's fine. And it's okay. We're not going to have to worry about your dolly coming to life. But it's like that it becomes safe because of how outrageous it is.
Yeah.
And that
terrifying because of that too.
Right. It becomes scary. It's like, wow, that's some weird stuff. But it is safe because you can turn it off.
G.I. Joe was going to come to life after this.
It very well still might. But it's just going to kill a cobra in your backyard.
Yeah.
I have nothing to worry about. I don't own a ZUNI doll. It's okay. My door's locked, despite the chain.
And I can get out of my apartment if I need to. But see, this speaks to the fact that we're all going to go back and watch this movie again. That is why I love this movie. And I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you all so much for turning up on Halloween. Looking forward to having you all on again very soon. Sako and the Moon, thanks for joining us for the first time. I hope it won't be the last.
I hope so.
Indeed.
And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.